Good morning, everybody. It's Paul Clegg from Somerset Marketing Hub Online, and today we've got a really special presentation. No pressure there, Ewan. We have Ewan Logan from SME Marketing, who's going to be talking about a special subject. In recent weeks, we've talked about marketing strategy, about the key elements of any marketing program, not the tactics. We do sometimes talk about tactics, about how to use Facebook, how to use YouTube. They're all tactics. Strategy is about joining the dots. It's the things that don't change. It's the system, it's the process that everybody needs to have if they're going to be successful, and a process they can repeat. Now, one of the things we talked about last week was the importance of an audience, of being able to get in front of an audience, either an audience you already have, or an audience you don't have right now but like to get in front of. Now, a lot of people talk about content and blogging and videoing and building that audience on a organic basis, that is giving out value, but that of course can take time. And one of the things that most entrepreneurs don't have is time, because time is definitely money. The faster that you're in front of people who want to buy your stuff, they're better. And if you've got to pay for that, then so be it. And that is probably the best tactic, because you can control that. You can actually today, tomorrow, get in front of your ideal audience, and it will cost you, but it'll cost you much more if you don't know what you're doing. So today we have Ewan Logan from SME Marketing, who's going to talk about pay-per-click and what you need to know in a broad basis to get started. So I'm now going to hand over to Ewan, and Ewan, you can take it from here.
Yes, thank you, Paul. I wanted to take you through pay-per-click, and it's an area that you could spend hours, or I could spend hours on, because I spent the last 15 years doing it. But what I wanted to do was give you an overview of the strategy that you can take, but also kind of how you can think about it, and a little bit of an overview of what it is and what it does from my point of view. So first of all, what is pay-per-click? Well, it kind of is what it says on the tin, really. It's online advertising where you pay for each click that an ad generates. And for me, the key there is making sure that every click you pay for is the click you want. And that's the key, is making sure that the people that are coming through are the people that you want them to do what you basically want them to do. So what is it? CPC, it can be known as CPC, cost per click. It can be known as PPC, pay per click. There is another form of it called CPM, which is it's called cost per thousand, but that's used more for branding. And then there's a very specific type of pay per click, which I quite like, which I will go into at the end, which is called website retargeting or website remarketing. When would you want to use PPC? Well, a lot of people just think of it as one use case, which is, I want to sell stuff, let me get my ads online with Google. And yes, that is a key point, and I put it down second, but there's lots of other areas where you can use PPC. So for example, when we see clients who are new to a market, often the first thing that they correctly identify is that their website, they need to build a website, they want to get an online presence. But the first conversation that we have with them is, it's all very well, we can set a website up for you, but that website, because of Google's sandpitting, is going to take a period of 3 to 6 months before it will show for your particular keywords. But what we can do is we can pay for keywords to support your SEO, to ensure that when people are going around the internet searching for your product or service, that you can show up, and that we can get clicks through to your website. We can start generating traffic, because the key to a start of a website often is as much understanding who is coming to the website, so that we can generate learnings to improve the website. So PPC can help us to do that, because we can effectively go through the same process that we would go through for SEO for PPC. So keyword research, looking at the types of keywords that we want to use and the sorts of keywords that we want to generate interest through. The second one is obviously generate sales. And the great thing about PPC is when you get really deep into it, you can get quite specific in terms of the pages that you want people to view, the products that you want people to view for specific keywords. The third one is you can generate awareness of a particular product or service. And again, you may want to use CPM if you're a big advertiser. That's what they will often do. And then the last one is branding. I've worked with clients in the past where we've specifically used, where we've split a pay-per-click campaign into two, where we've had a sales target and then we've had a branding target. And the branding is much more around using the brand name, whereas the sales target is about keywords around the product or the service or the pain point which we're trying to solve. So I think those are the kind of the four key uses, but really probably the main two are the top two. With you could probably swap generate sales first for supporting SEO. And I've, again, the use case for support SEO is both for small companies and for much larger companies. So where do we use pay-per-click? Well, there's lots of places. The one that everyone really knows is Google Ads, and I think probably a lot of people get what used to be a flyer that you get through the post from Google saying we'll match your spend to £80 for everything that you do. I think they still do that. So Google and to a certain extent Yahoo and Bing. So search engines is a big one. There's also something that's probably little known to people outside of the industry, which is something called the Google Display Network. Now, the Google Display Network is effectively other websites where they will have a little console where they will allow Google ads to show. So, for example, if you have an ad for your product and you decide to go on the Google Display Network, it works in exactly the same way in that you use key terms and key phrases to have your ad show up, but rather than it showing on the Google search return page, when you type in a search term, it will return if you're in a site that is on the Google Display Network. So I've done it in America a lot. So Forbes, the Wall Street Journal. In the UK, some of the newspapers, some of the local newspapers, the local publications will also be on the Google Display Network. And if you look at the cost for a Google Display Network ad as opposed to a Google ad is a fraction of it. Google Display Network is very good for awareness because you can generate a lot of impressions. Now, impressions are where the ad's shown. You don't pay for the impressions. You only pay for the clicks. So if you're generating the impressions but not generating the clicks, then at least you're getting shown. The clicks on a Google Display Network are a lot less. Pay-per-click can also be done through social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and I'll go into the slight differences with those to Google Ads when we get to the how. Within something like LinkedIn, you can have pay-per-click where you have graphic ads, which we call banner ads. And these are graphical representations. They come in, usually there's about 7 standard sizes. You can also do graphic ads within the Google Display Network. And obviously, if your product's quite visual, then having something where you've got a banner advertising or where you've got to get a little more information, that can be quite a beneficial thing to do. So LinkedIn and Facebook, they have banner advertising. Instagram is all visual. But effectively, it's the same thing. You may produce a banner or you may produce there's lots of different names for them. They're called MPUs, banners. You produce that, but it's still, you're only paying for the click. They can be often the social networks as well. If you go into LinkedIn and you want to set up an ad, they will help you do it. So you don't have to have a designer go and do it. You can actually, they can basically scrape your website and produce an ad for you that you can then put online. And the last thing is something, again, that's probably very only known to practitioners, which is something called programmatic advertising. also known as real-time bidding, which effectively is where it's like going, if you imagine going to, if you're going to a trading place, you know, if you're going to go and trade something and you want to go and buy something in a marketplace, it's effectively a marketplace for advertising, but it does the same thing. You say, I want to show my ad to a certain audience within a certain type of website, and this real time, you put in your ceiling cost for how much you want to pay, and you basically, it's bid for in real time, your ad goes and shows, you get paid if someone clicks. There are very specific sites where you can kind of do this all in one. So one I use and have used quite a lot is a system called AdRoll. AdRoll allows you to do a lot of your social media. You can do programmatic. You can also do the retargeting that I'm going to go into. It doesn't allow you to do Google Ads, but you can kind of get, if you use Google, the Google console and something like AdRoll, you can kind of cover the whole of the market. So next one is how. Most of it, we all know, is about keywords. So depending on the platform, depends how you can do it, but most of it is actually keywords and key phrases. And very much unlike SEO, where you're not paying for the keywords that you're using, within Google and within the search networks, you are paying for the keywords that you do. So they will charge you a specific price for a click for a specific keyword. The more general and the more broad you are, the more expensive the keyword can be. I've worked in programs in the past where I've paid up to $50 per click. Now, obviously, if you're paying $50 for a click, you want to make sure that that click that's coming through is someone who is actually actively looking for what you want them to do, be that to buy a product or service, or be that to look at your brand. When we're talking about smaller businesses, it's not going to be that much. You can be talking pence or very low pounds. Again, the key is to make sure that the keywords that you are using are as accurately reflecting the product or service or the end game that you want them to do. When you build out a campaign within Google, Google gives you all the tools for this. So if you go in, they have what's called a Google keyword tool. They will go in and they will do a number of things. They will, if you say, right, well, I'll take Rod for an example. I'm in funeral directors. I want to bid on funeral directors in Wales. You go into Google, you build that, you put that search term in. They will return a number of things. They will say, well, we expect there to be 150 searches per month, and also they will tell you this is the click-through rate that you will get. So you can start to try and build out what might the cost be. I'll go into this again in a little bit of detail, but often they're quite they over-represent the results that you can expect, let's say. So you go into Google, and Google, it will help you build this. It'll help you, and it will also suggest other keywords. So if you're kind of like, well, I know that I want to go for funeral directors, but then it comes up and says, well, if you've got this keyword, why don't you try funeral services? And it'll provide you with other particular keywords. If you're looking at social media, so if you're within Facebook or within LinkedIn, you get keyword targeting, but also you start to get demographic targeting. So demographic targeting might be, well, I'm interested in targeting over 40-year-olds who are predominantly male, who live in the southwest of England. You can put those into Facebook, and Facebook will tell you the size of audience that you're looking at, often enormous. And you can use that as your targeting. So you can use keywords and you can use demographics. I think it's fair to say within social media, you can probably be far more targeted in what you're doing. So you can be really, really, really refined in who you want to target. And again, the good thing is, because you're only paying for the click, you know, you can have a big audience. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a massive amount of clicks, and it's going to cost you. The other thing you can do within Facebook specifically, and Instagram, and to a certain extent LinkedIn. Within LinkedIn, your demographics will be far more business based. So if you're a business to business provider, you can say, I want to find marketing directors who work in technology organizations, and I want the organization to be no larger than 25,000 people. You put that in, and it will tell you the audience, and you can set that as an audience for your campaign. Facebook and Instagram, you can also target by interests. So if you want to say, well, I want to find people who have a demographic of X, but I also want to find people who have an interest in something. So it might be an interest in culture, it might be an interest in sport. They have a huge raft of things that you can do, but you can build that. So you can build a multi-layered view of the customer, the ideal customer that you want to bring to your site. And as it said at the bottom, you can bring a combination of all of these. Because of the information that social media companies carry about the people that are on their sites, they are the ones who can target far more than probably the search ads. But conversely, the search networks, Google specifically, they can return much higher volumes in terms of the number of searches that you might get, just because there's more people within those than within the social media networks. That's the how. So why? Well, PPC is a very accountable form of advertising. You can see instantly, if you get the real detail of it, the one thing that I love about PPC is, on the broad sense, you can say, I want to target someone and I want to bring them through for a click for a particular keyword, and I know how much it's going to cost me for a click. That's the broad term. But if you get into the detail of it, what you can do, and you can do this across, you can match up all of the networks, is you can say, right, I want to understand, I put an ad up and I set, what do I want my campaign to do? So I set myself goals. So the first thing I want to do is I want to bring someone to my site. So that's goal 1. But I want them to do more than that. And so I want this ad to work harder than just bringing someone to my site. So within the Google Analytics or Google AdWords, you can set up more goals. So you say, firstly, so what is the customer journey that I want people to do? My first thing is I want to bring them to the site. That's goal 1. The second thing is I want to take them to my shop. That's goal 2. So I set up within Google, I set up goal 1, goal 2. What do I want them to do next? Right, they're in my shop. I then want them to put a product in their basket. So I set product into the basket as goal 3, tick. What do I finally want them to do? Right, I finally want them to leave the shop having made a purchase. So goal 4, I set as I want them to purchase. And what you can see, if you set this up within the console, is all of these things. So if a customer comes through, you will see they go to the ad, tick. They come through, they hit the shop, they hit your site, tick. They hit the shopping basket, tick. They make a purchase, tick. You can then see how many people come in to goal 1, how many people hit goal 2, having hit goal 1, how many people hit goal 3, having hit the previous 2, and so on. What you can then do is you can then assign a value to each of those. So I know that it costs me X to get people to goal 1, and I know a certain percentage of goal 1 go on to goal 4. So these people are worth a certain amount to me. And you can do these across the different goals. What that allows you to do then is, rather than just saying, I want an ad and I'm going to pay X, it says, I'm going to produce an ad which is going to provide me with X, because I know that at each stage, this particular keyword and this particular ad is worth this amount of money to me. That's why it's very accountable. On its broadest level, yes, but when you get into the deep dive into it, it is very accountable. And by changing the different criteria and the different points, you can also change the amounts that you're looking at in terms of how much money am I going to get back for a particular ad. And it sounds very complex. You can do this yourself. The one thing that Google wants you to do is Google wants you to advertise with them. So Google makes this as simple as it can be, but you do need to have an idea of what the expectations you might get. But again, Google will try and help you. As I say, when you're going into, when you're starting your campaign, and say you're sitting down and you're going, right, what keywords am I going to use? Google will tell you, Google will say, you can expect, we had one client where we were selling a particular product. We went and did the keyword research using the keyword tool. And Google said that we could expect a 4.4% click-through rate for a particular keyword or set of keywords. In our experience, that was very, very stretching what you could really expect. So when we went back to the client, we gave them two scenarios. We said, this is what Google will tell us. Google's expecting you to get 4.4% at goal 1, which is coming to the site. We then projected through for this particular client what we would expect in goal 2, 3, 4. However, in our experience, actually, you should really only be seeing around 1%, because 4% is really not going to happen. But again, at least we've set up the expectations. And the second point that's really important about it is if you say, well, I think I'm going to get 4%, you end up getting 0.2%, you can turn it off. It's not working, turn it on, turn it off. Google does not penalize you in any way. The only thing I would say about PPC is, and this is what I have a lot of clients do, they use it quite short term. And within Google, the thing that's most important to Google, I'm talking very specifically about search engines, Google wants you to be relevant. Google doesn't want people bidding for keywords and then people visiting a site that has nothing to do with the search term. They want to ensure that the keyword or key phrase that someone is using matches very closely to the product or service or website that they're visiting. So Google employs what's called a quality score. This quality score effectively says, what is the relationship between this person's ad, this person's site, and the keyword that you're using? If the relationship is very close, Google says tick, yes, that's a close one. Brilliant. If that relationship is not so close, Google goes, not quite happy about this, and Google effectively will penalize you. You may pay slightly more if your quality score isn't high. When people employ very short-term PPC campaigns, they are effectively paying a little bit more because Google takes a little bit of time for this information to generate. And hence, being quite short-term with PPC can sometimes not be ideal because A, you might not get the learnings you want, and B, you may end up getting slightly skewed results. Let's not say you have to spend a fortune. The great thing about PPC is I've managed campaigns for PPC in the hundreds of thousands per month, but I've also managed campaigns for PPC where we're talking 150 and 200 pounds per month. The learnings you can get from one they're not statistically viable, but they are equally as valuable as the one you can get for the huge amount. The third why for PPC is the great thing you can do is if you're relating PPC and SEO, so the organic search, which you get for your website, to the paid search, you can use PPC to gain a greater depth of understanding to the keywords which your customers are looking for. So you might set your website up with an SEO which is based on a certain number of keywords, but you might find as your business progresses that you think, hang on, maybe the market's changing. Maybe customers are not quite looking for what my SEO is built for. You can use PPC to test that, to use slightly different keywords and see, is the market slightly changing? Are customers using slightly different keywords? And maybe I actually need to change my website, and maybe I need to change the SEO that I'm striving for in my website because of what I'm seeing within PPC. The fourth thing, obviously, PPC helps you understand your audience because you can see in real time what keywords and what interests and what demographics are making people come to your website. And even more, you can understand your audience. You can understand kind of a little bit about what makes them tick, because you can understand You know, if I'm bringing someone to my website with keyword A and I'm getting them through to sale, that's brilliant. So obviously the keyword that I'm using there is what people really want to make them go through to a sale. If I'm using keyword B and everyone is falling off at goal 1, so I'm getting a great response to my site, but I'm not going any further, then I need to either think about the customer journey within my website, or I need to dump that keyword. But what you're doing is you're understanding more about your audience. And you don't have to have 4 goals. You can have as many goals as you want. Depending on how big or how small your site is, you can set any goals that you want. And it doesn't have to be for sales. It might be that if your site's more of an information site, and what and the key to your end game is to actually have someone view a particular piece of content, you can set that page up as one of your goals. But ultimately, the last reason for doing pay-per-click is for sales, because then you can say, I know that every ad, if I'm spending £100 on pay-per-click, I will get £150 back. If I'm, I'm spending £150 on pay-per-click, and I'm getting this much engagement on my site, and if I assign a value to that engagement, I can then track through what that's worth. Within pay-per-click, just going back and looking at it overview, this is very, as I say, it's very much an overview. It's not into the depths of how you do it. We think there are 4 pillars to keep PPC, and the first one is the most difficult, but I think it's the most important. I've heard so many people say, I don't use PPC, it doesn't work, or PPC is expensive. It can be, yes, but the key is, before you do anything, is understanding what you might achieve by doing it. And you can only do that by forecasting. If you walk into anything with your eyes wide open, then you can understand better the results that you get. So if you're selling a very high ticket product, then yes, PPC might be expensive, but it's only expensive if you're not getting a response from it. If you're spending a lot of money, but you're getting even more money back, then it's not expensive. So what we try and do with customers and clients is we try and forecast based on the experience that we have. So if we're building a site, and if we're looking at a particular product, we will build into any PPC campaign all of these, what's called goal tracking. So we will track all these goals, and we will say that we expect you to get X% come into your website, X% who then go through to your shop, X% who then go through to the basket, and X% who then purchase. We can then track and assign a value to each of those percentages, so that when we go to a campaign, rather than saying I'm going to spend £100, we're going to say we're going to spend £100, but we expect to get X number of people to goal 1, X number of people to goal 2, X number of people to goal 3, and X number of people to goal 4. Because what that allows us then to have is a much better conversation with clients and customers when we start the campaign, because then we can say, great, we did get X% to goal 1, or we didn't. And if we did, that's brilliant. Let's do more of the same. And if we didn't, why didn't we? What we have actually is we've got a little spreadsheet that does all of this, and it's a spreadsheet which can easily be populated, and it has very basic figures put into it. So I'm happy to send that out to anyone who wants it, so you can play around with kind of what we think. It needs to be built specifically for a particular site, but it allows you to see how we forecast. And again, when you're in Google, it will give you the basics of forecasting. So if you're doing a campaign, try and understand what you might expect, so that when you come to analyze it, when you come to look at it, you can have a much more informed decision about has it worked or has it not worked. The second key pillar is to integrate all of your Google channels. Now, a lot of websites don't have analytics on them, but the one thing that we would always say is make sure you have everything set up for the best results. So you have the Google Search Console, Google Analytics, and Google AdWords all linked. It sounds very technical, and if you look at it the first time, it probably is, but for someone who knows how they do it, it's actually quite simple to link them all, so that basically when you start a campaign, you have one view that allows you to see all of these things, all of these results that you're getting, to allow you to make better and more informed decisions. Third one is measurement and monitoring. You must put the measurement in. There's no point in having, well, in my opinion, in our opinion, there's no point in having a Google PPC or any PPC campaign if you're not measuring and monitoring. How do you measure and monitor? Very simple. Ensure that you have what are called the tracking pixels on your website. Very simple to do, and there's lots of different ways of doing it, but there's very simple ways of doing it. Most CMS systems now have the ability to have all of them within there. So you can have your LinkedIn tracking pixel, your Facebook tracking pixel, and your Google tracking pixel. All you need to do is put them on once. You put them on once, and when you do a campaign, it will automatically then monitor and measure what you're doing. Sorry, you have to do the monitoring, it will measure for you. And also, as I say, a lot of people, when they set up PPC campaigns, they don't put in conversion tracking. They put in the very basic tracking, which is, I've got X people coming to my site, and that's what gives me Y. But we would say, put in conversion tracking. Identify what it is you want customers or prospects to do when they come to your site, and put that as a tracking, as a conversion goal. You can have as many as you want. But again, by doing this, you have a lot more information coming back to you, which allows you to make much more informed decisions about how you move forward with it. You know, because with a small business, or with any business, spending money on marketing needs to generate money. The only way you can understand where you're generating money from is to measure and monitor what you're doing. And the last thing is test and learn. Again, the great thing about Google and about all of the social networks is it will help you do the testing and learning. You don't have to produce lots of ads and say, right, I need to specify that I need to do ad 1 for this amount of time and ad 2 for this amount of time. Within Google, if you're doing text paid search, so where you have sponsored ads at the top of a search return, you can put in 20, 30 different variations of the ad if you want, and ask Google, and Google will test and learn for you. Google will return them for keywords and return them in rotation, and it will then start to rotate the best performing ones. It will rotate and rotate and rotate until it finds the best performing ad, and then it will say it will just return the best performing one. So you can test and learn how you put the the copy together. You know, you can get very technical. Do you use dynamic ads, which are ads where you can have different chunks of text and it will put specific text in for specific keywords? Google will do this all for you, but by testing and learning, again, it's helping you to improve, measure, monitor, and produce the best PPC campaign that you can. That's an overview really of PPC. It's not so much it's not so much how to do it, but it gives you, hopefully gives you just an overview of what it is and the sorts of things you can be looking for. Now, I'm happy in future sessions to go into a particular, how do you build out a PPC campaign for Google, and what does the Google Search Console look like, and how do you put goals in? I can do that. It's a longer presentation, but I'm happy to do that. But hopefully it gives you an idea into the 4 pillars that we have of PPC, and what PPC is for, what it's good for, and what it can do. The last side I want to talk about, and this is something I really like. It's only suitable for probably websites of a certain size. But have you ever wondered, you know, you go into an online service, and you then 2 or 3 days later you're typing around the internet and you suddenly realize an ad for that service that you've been is there, and then you go to another website and you realize there's another ad for that service that's there. That's not by accident. That's actually something called website retargeting. Effectively what it is companies, you can say, I want to follow Rod Major around the internet. So I go in and I can set up a series of ads. If Rod has visited my website, I can then follow Rod around, and I can follow him with messaging where hopefully I can get Rod to come back to my website to purchase from me. You can do that within a wide variety of websites. You can do it in social media. You can target messages according to page views. So if I've got a website and I have and I'm selling widgets, and I know that Rod has visited the page for widget A, I can then follow, and he hasn't purchased, but I think that, you know, I want to, people like Rod, because they visited that page, I think I can get them to purchase. I can then follow Rod around the internet with more messages about how great widget A is, and how you must, you know, how it's a brilliant thing to buy widget A. And I can say, right, I'll follow him for the next however long, the next 30 days. And every time that Rod goes to, well, not every time, but on a number of occasions when Rod visited certain websites, and it can be anywhere, he will then get an ad for widget A. The other thing you can do is, if you've got, you know, if you're a company that has email addresses, you can also upload these email addresses into a system. And again, I've used AdRoll, a system called AdRoll in the past, and you can get the system to follow. They match, I don't know how they do it, they match the email data to cookie data, and you can then follow people around the internet with ads from your email addresses. You can also then, if you've got a lot of people coming to your website and you're retargeting, as they call it, lots of people, and you're following them around the internet, you can ask the system to look for lookalikes. So it will go into its system, and it's got billions and billions of people in there, and it will say, well, I've got 500 people on here who look like Rod. I will also retarget those people, because I think Rod's interested in that particular product or service. I think these 500 might be interested as well. So I will follow them around. The downside to it is you do have to have a certain amount of traffic coming to your site. So typically you need to have a minimum of 1,000 people a month probably coming to your site, which does cut out a lot of websites. But the reason I put it up is I think it's a great tool if your site's of that size. It's very simple to do. And again, the reason I've done it under this session is because it actually comes under pay-per-click. So you can follow people around the internet, but still you'll only pay for that advertising if they click to come back to your site. So it's just something I wanted to throw in, because it's something I'm quite a fan of. I think it was probably Amazon that started doing it first, but it probably gives some people an idea of why all of a sudden they realize that they see ads coming when they didn't realize that they were there. And that's it really. That's kind of as I say, a whistle stop overview into PPC. It's not a how-to, but hopefully it might just give you a little bit more of an idea of the use cases where you might use it, the things that you need to think about. And as I say, the most important for me is the two most important things with PPC are forecasting, so you manage your expectations, and secondly, understanding what's going on, and thirdly, ensuring that you have conversion tracking in place. Oh, sorry, yes, Kelly's just said quite rightly. The last site is, the last page is, there is actually, there is going to be a how-to guide to PPC. So that will be much more in depth. That will be about how do I do a Google ad? Very simply, how do I do a Google ad, or how do I do a LinkedIn ad, or how do I do a Facebook ad? We haven't built it yet, but it will be up on the website soon. And as I say, that's much more of a how-to guide. But again, in the future, if anyone wants, I can go into more detail into, you know, how do I set up a Google campaign? How do I set up a LinkedIn campaign? Or how do I monitor campaigns? Anything really. So I hope that helps. Any questions, or have I dumbfounded everyone with boredom?
Not at all. I mean, for me, that was incredibly useful. Could we have something similar on Facebook as well, please?
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a dinosaur, as you may have noticed. And
I've read the comments.
and I'm very skeptical. I think if you start dripping 10 quid into Google, they'll think, oh, good, we've caught another one. I'm not going to do anything until you start putting £10 a week every week. I have to say, I've tried it. I'm not good at it. I probably did it wrong. All it was getting hold of a big bunch of money and pouring it in something. And
and Barry, that is exactly.
And you know what you're doing. I think you might as well put a pile of £10 notes in the middle of the desk and burn them.
Barry, and I think that's what I hear an awful lot. And if you don't, yes, you can do. But if you were ever thinking about doing it again, I will send you our sheet, because it's all very well tipping 10 quid in, but if you can have a little bit more about what do I want my 10 quid to do, you can then make a more of an informed decision. Because you may have been putting 10 quid in, but you may have had people going there to your site and looking, and you won't know that they're coming back to purchase from you. Now, you may not have done, but if you put the money in and you understand those particular points with conversion and say, right, okay, well, yes, I've put £10 in, but I know where that £10 has gone, and I know what people have done with that £10. You may then you might prove to yourself, yes, it's just a waste of time. But you may also find, oh, actually, so many people went and did this. That's quite interesting.
I think what,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, yes, I see what you mean. But and one of the things I like to do is measure things. So that might actually
exactly what you're doing it.
I beg your pardon?
I was going to say the thing is, I mean, I was in publishing for 25 years, and everything I did related to selling advertising. So if I didn't have any advertisers, I didn't have a business. One of the first things I did when I set up the Devon Diary was not allow someone to come in as a one-off advert. They had to either do 3, 6, or 12 months advertising, and that paid off big style, because people, it doesn't work just doing one insertion. And so Google knows all this. Google, you know, you're tracking every penny you spend, Barry, is tracked. Testing and measuring. Ever heard that expression?
I think
Barry, if you were ever sorry, I was just going to say, Barry, if you're ever interested in doing it again, give us a shout, and because you're on the hub, we can help you do some of this forecasting just for you to look at, because it doesn't take very much time to do, and then you can see the sorts of information you might be getting. But Rod's quite right, and Rod is very true as well. As I said about the quality scoring, Google does penalize you if you're going to do very short-term campaigns. Google definitely penalizes you. They don't penalize. They wouldn't say they're penalizing you. They're charging you more because they're saying we're trying to understand what you're trying to do, and we want to make sure that the product and service that you're selling is related to the keywords that you're using. But if you did want to do it, it's very simple to do.
You might argue that Google is a business like everybody else has got a business here. They want long-term customers. They want to deliver value. If they're taking money off you to get you in front of an audience, they want to get you in front of that audience. When we were talking about the customer journey, you at least can measure that. And to me, the highlight there is if you find a lot of people are clicking, but they're leaving the journey or they're leaving the process when you get to B or C, you might need to then question, is my pricing right? Is my messaging right? Are my visuals right? Etc. And I think Rod's point was also good, but raises a point I wanted to ask, is 82% of all sales take place after the 7th touch. Now, obviously, you can try and improve on that if you're really targeting well and you've got people with that need. There are so many different variables. What we're saying here is at least you can measure what it's costing you to get in front of that customer and then track the rest. So the tracking is probably as much as more as important as the creative. What I was going to ask is, when it comes to a budget and you put a budget in, let's say on Facebook, and you say, right, I'm going to spend £5 a day until I've spent £10 for 7 days. Will Facebook work harder for me if I said I want to spend £5 a day for 30 days, knowing that I can always cut that short? What's the strategy of setting a larger budget?
Now, there's a very good question. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I do not know. I would think it's completely agnostic and that there's no difference because of the way it works, because it works on because it works on the number of clicks that you're generating. But I couldn't be 100% sure on that because I've never worked on that sort of view of saying long-term versus short-term.
Okay, the other question I had, I don't know if there's any other questions, was that do you have any content on your site or any advice for, we've got different people with looking for different audiences. Are there certain audiences that are better found or easier found? What's the best, what have I put here? What's the best channel for the audiences that you see here on this call? So what would be the best channel for Simon? What would be the best, not audience, what's the best channel for Simon to find his customers versus Barry or Joe?
Well, I think the difference between Barry and Simon, it would be quite simple, because Barry, I would say for Barry's is quite business to business related. So thinking about LinkedIn and is probably much more than probably Simon is probably, I know obviously there's professional difficulties, but would be Facebook. I've used Facebook for business to business. I've used it actually quite well, but LinkedIn's more business to business. Facebook is more business to consumer. So if you're talking to end clients, Google is everything really. Google, you can do everything. I think it's very much a specific case, and it's if Mark was looking for an audience, Mark could go into LinkedIn and say, Mark would be very much a LinkedIn audience. But you can go in and look and say, right, who do I want to find? And does LinkedIn give me an option to finding that? Yes. Surprisingly, I go into Facebook and I find that Facebook also provides me with an option. You might find the response is slightly lower because of the nature of Facebook, which is much more people talking to people, whereas LinkedIn is business people talking to business people. But because Google is based on keywords, it doesn't really matter. It's about the keyword that you're searching for.
Okay.
So what we have seen across the three channels, you tend to see a better response overall from the Google stuff. So Google tends to give you a higher click-through rate and a greater propensity to buy. Facebook and LinkedIn tend to give you much more awareness. The click-through rates can vary, but it's usually lower. So I suppose because they're serving to potentially more impressions, but the statistics against all channels, when we're forecasting, you'll find that Google search always seems to be the highest click-through rate, with lower for GDN, Facebook, LinkedIn, and retargeting.
Except in LinkedIn, where you're purely business to business.
Yeah.
Because LinkedIn is very good on pure business to business.
The difference in those channels, of course, which needs to be borne in mind, is that when you go on Google, you're actually searching for a solution often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a bit more direct response and more immediate. Whereas when you go on Facebook or LinkedIn, you're just going on to connect. You're not necessarily searching for something,
And the other thing you notice with Google, if you put funerals in on Google, it automatically fills the space with near me. So there they are trying to help you. And then if you look at where it takes you, and then you look at the companies above you, if you look at yourself, if the big boys are spending big bucks, if you want to be near the top, you're going to have to spend a lot of money. But if you look, Barry, at who's your competition, where are they, how are they getting to where they are, if that's where you want to be, and just analyze it from your point of view to your competitor, as did I, and found a way to snake into it, if you like. If that's the wrong expression, too bad.
Yeah, Joseph.
No.
Joseph first and then Joe.
Yeah, so one of the things that when you were talking about the pay-per-click and having that information on the websites, I know a lot of, like you were saying, the SEO. So if somebody's going to go and do a pay-per-click campaign, do you or can you use that analytical information of, okay, well, where is the traffic going currently to this website, which pages, what are the types of information that they're clicking on, to then go to a client, okay, what is your end goal? We kind of know this information already about your website, and if this is your end goal, then here are the missing pieces. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yes, and that's exactly what you would do. Yeah, the idea is to add everything up, and that's why connecting all of your analytics together so that you have one view of everything allows you to have a holistic view of what you're doing. Because what you might then do, to your point, is if you've got a gap for your SEO, you might then use PPC to plug that gap.
Okay.
The other thing Google Analytics allows you to do when you set up all your goals is it will show you, to Paul's point, there's 8 touch points. It will show you how people got to a sale. So if sales what you want to do or download, it will show you every touch point and where they came from. So it will say this person came through Facebook, then they came through Google search, then they came direct, then they came back through Facebook again, Facebook a third time, and then they bought. So it'll tell you exactly that channel, and it will reproduce your most popular channel as well. So it will say, of all your traffic,
Attribution.
100 people, 20, 50 people came through this particular channel. So it's really
and what we call, and what a lot of companies, the bigger companies, strive for is what they call attribution. So what they're trying to do is attribute a particular sale to particular channels that they're using. So it might be that they say, right, I know that Google, I can put, for every sale I have, I can put a value of Google paid search of 50% of that attributed sale. I can put 20% of LinkedIn. But for a smaller company, it's effectively, you can then see, so as Kelly said, it'll provide you with a graphic interpretation of where people are coming from. So it'll show you the end sale, and it gives you kind of like arrows, a graphical representation of the different channels and how they're using them to get to your end sale. But you can only do that if you have the analytics put there in the first place. Which is,
Joe,
again, if you're using the CMS, it's all built within the CMS, customer management system. Sorry, Joe.
Joe. I think Joe had a question.
The microphone's on.
Microphone, Joe.
Sorry. Yeah, just really around how viable any of this is without my own website. As you know, I don't have a website, and I don't want to send traffic to SmartPA's website, to be honest.
Difficult, because I would, if you're a client coming to me and say, I can't understand what I'm doing, I would say, don't do it. Unfortunately, because you might just be throwing weak. I can't do if I was doing it for you, I can't do the best job I'm doing if I can't understand what's happening.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, we've come actually past the top of the hour. That's how fascinating and interesting this has been, and clearly there's a desire for something more in depth in a particular area. The whole idea of the Somerset Marketing Hub is to discuss marketing and marketing that's relevant, and by that I mean to discuss different and very effective ways in which you can get in front of people you need to and want to get in front of and do more business. That's the whole idea. So if there's an area that you maybe would like Kelly or Ewan or me or anybody else to discuss a little bit further, then just let us know, either now as we say cheerio or on the Facebook page. So I'm going to say just brief feedback, and from Mark.
No, all very useful. Made a few notes as we were going through, so something to work on, and I wish everybody a good week ahead.
Have you got any potential budget for advertising on LinkedIn?
There's always potential, but you've got to make sure every penny counts.
Yeah, no, I think we're all in the same boat there, Mark. Simon.
Yeah, no, that was interesting. It's driven more questions than answers, I'm afraid, particularly for what I look for and how I look for it. So it's conundrumized me. Just in terms of two other very briefly things. One, Elaine, yeah, I'll reply to your email, and then obviously I'll speak to Paul later. My issue is, yes, I am a service rather than a product, so I don't always understand the analogy between the two. And actually, if I'm putting suicide or men or very specific things into Google, they kick me off as adverts. So I can't actually.
Suppose if you're targeting people on the verge of suicide, it better work fast.
Well, exactly, but they do kick the adverts off as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, like they do for COVID-19 at the moment as well. You can't do any adverts around that.
Elaine.
All right, thank you.
No, thanks, guys. That was really interesting and great food for thought. I've pinged you an email. Let's talk.
Rod?
It reminds me of Mystic Meg a bit, you know. Google's the old place, you know. You can really sort of get to things, and old Barry definitely doesn't believe in it. But you know, from an advertising background and having sort of worked all my life in selling me or selling something around me, I know how difficult and this new thing. And of course, it helps that my son-in-law works for Google. I mean, he tells me stuff that would blow your mind, but you know, it's incredibly important that if we want to get in front, to find that way of doing it. And this is just another tool that we need to implement and use. I mean, it doesn't stop me going up on the market and doing what I do there as well, you know. So it's a combination of a mixture of things that we've all got to learn to do, and some of them are new, and Google is the new thing, I suppose.
The thing is, of course, you can decide to trial and just to learn from it. Even if you said, right, I'll spend £20 over 5 days, it'll let you do that. Maybe it won't give you quite the statistics you need that Ewan's explained, but you know, it can give you that bit of experience. Joe.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Knew it would be, because all that sort of stuff does interest me, the marketing background. But as I thought, I didn't think it was going to be as appropriate for myself in the situation that I'm in, unfortunately. But yeah, great stuff.
There is a couple of things you could look at. You could look at, if you've got anything on Facebook that's your own, you could look at that. But also you could look at potentially, and I don't know how this will work, looking at building like a simple landing page and trying to do something off the back of landing pages rather than websites. As long as
I have got a landing page which I'm using for my testimonials at the moment, so I drive people to that to look at testimonials.
Couldn't she use it to grow an audience of followers, not necessarily to sell anything? You know,
yeah, exactly.
We said yes last week. You have an audience of 1,000 people or 2,000 people where you resonate. It will be easier long term to sell to that audience. So that could be a fast way of getting that.
Yeah. Finally, yes, you can do a Facebook page or LinkedIn. Yeah. Promote the Facebook page. Yeah.
Yeah. Barry. Finally, Barry.
Well, Kelly and Ewan, first of all, I apologise because I am a dinosaur and I really, really don't like paying Google cash for no obvious reason. However, as I said to Kelly just now in a message, I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to this Google stuff. So perhaps I should give it more, I don't know, rational thought after the school holidays. August is terrible for me. Everybody goes on holiday. No one does anything. I don't spend any money. No money comes in. That's it. So after the school holidays, perhaps I should give it a bit more rational, serious thought, and at least have a conversation with you.
Yeah, a one-to-one, Barry.
You know, it would be really good, and it could be that we might be able to contain it with the hour, or it might be an extended session. Is actually maybe show everybody how you would set up an imaginary campaign. And I'm thinking about how we would set up a campaign for Barry, because if not that he has to use it or whatever, but it would help us all. You know, because I think one of the challenges
I would like to do.
Yeah.
Because of the position that Barry's in, I would do it slightly different. I'd probably do 2 sessions, and the first one, Barry, would be, if you're interested in going down the route of just dipping your toe in again, is do one session where we talk about your forecasting and your expectations, and we will show you how we forecast what we're doing. Go through that. So we go through that, you know, this is what you might expect. This is how we go through that process to set your expectations. And then perhaps a second session where we can then do it. So we could do it of a series of sessions where we set up a campaign, and then perhaps a week or two later we can then analyze it. And you can either say, ha, told you so, or you can go, oh, that's interesting.
It would be,
Yeah,
yeah, go on.
I had on my banner, on my old banner, photo books, and I used to spend a lot of money on pay-per-click on photo books, and I never got my money back. I've been burnt once. I am a dinosaur / skeptical. Perhaps I do need educating.
Here's one final thought on getting burnt. I used to work for a very big company who should remain nameless, and back in the late 2000s, they gave someone some money to do a pay-per-click campaign. They realized they spent $1 million and didn't get anything back from it because the person doing it didn't know what they were doing.
That was me.
$1 million. That company, I worked for that company for a number of years, and I ran their digital marketing. I actually set their digital marketing up. By the end of the time I left with them, they were spending $330,000 a month on PPC because we changed their minds.
Amazing.
Rod spent
So it's
that.
possible.
Didn't Rod spend £99 in his last campaign and got 3 pieces of business as a result of it? Valued at,
if you said £2,500 to me, net profit, value overall about £10,000.
so £10,000. Did you say 3,000, 2,500 profit?
Yep.
And he spent £99. But the point is, he's actually got the measurements there, and that's the benefit. So I would think he's far better off continuing to spend that and dropping the print advertising that he's doing where he hasn't got any record.
And believe me, I'm not saying that for everyone it works. It doesn't. And you might be right, Barry, it might not work. But the thing you want to be able to understand is, why isn't it working? And if I understand why it's not working, then I can make an informed decision.
Great. I think that's been absolutely brilliant today, folks. Thanks very much again to Ewan for putting that together and for sharing that bit of expertise. Thanks very much to everybody, and we'll see you in a week's time. All the best.
Bye.
Bye.
See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.